Welcome to another edition of the SynCom Small Talk tutorial series. What we'd like to go through today is an overview of VisualWorks. We've done an overview of Object Studio, and today it's time to take a look at VisualWorks. So with that in mind, let's get this out of the way and go ahead and take a look at the basic image. This is visual.im, just started up here on this Mac, and this is how you start up. You get your workspace and you get the launcher. The workspace has a little bit of information here about where to go for more information. And if you've downloaded the PLU edition, there'll be a lot more information here about getting started, including a tutorial. But leaving that aside, this is the base image. Now up here in the launcher, you'll find a number of menu items. You'll find the file menu. The file browser is on this, which we're not going to really go into much detail on. You can use the standard tools on Windows or Mac to get to that. It has a few features about filing in code. We'll leave that be for a moment. You can open files, so if you have a workspace file you've saved out to disk, you can open it this way. The main things you want to do from here are save your work. So when you save your image, what you are doing is taking a snapshot of everything that's going on in your workspace, meaning the entire image here. So you're saving the entire system in its current state. So saving image would save under the existing name, which you probably don't want to do for visual.im. You probably want to do save image as and save it under a new name, typically something like working or the project number you're working on, something like that. Perm save and perm undo. Well, perm save is an interesting one. It has to do with the way memory is allocated in the image. In 64-bit images, this won't be here, and it's probably going away in the future, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on it. Suffice to say that it is important for run times in 32-bit images, in 64-bit images, not so much. Headless, you typically don't need to save your image headless, and the reason is you can start an image with no GUI directly off the command line, have been able to do so for a number of years now. If you want to save it without a GUI, you can do so here and then start it up. Again, you can do it off the command line. Set VisualWorks Home. This one can be relevant, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. If you open up a browser and you go in here and select something, let's say some method, and you see decompiled code here, and it's decompiled code for the base system, not for any code you've written. That's a different problem. If it's decompiled here in base code shipped to you by your vendor, SynCom, then what you probably have is a problem where your VisualWorks home variable, and that'll bring up this in settings, that means this directory is not where you've got VisualWorks installed. Make sure that this, what you see here, matches where you've actually got VisualWorks installed, and this will bring up a directory browser. Make sure the two line up. Once they line up, lost source code problems for the base system should go away. So that's an important thing to know about the file menu right there. Exit, of course, pretty obvious. You exit the base system. Off the system menu, there are a few other things you're going to get to. Parcel Manager. This is how you're going to bring additional tools into your system. So if you bring that up, and it can take a little bit to come up. It's parsing through what's out there on the system. It's categorized here, so things most people load, popular browser extensions, things specific to Windows, other libraries, platform connectivity. Version control would be where you find store stuff, web development. You can find all of these categories, and over here for individual things like under popular, connecting to C, getting code highlighting for your browser, getting the tabbed interface instead of the kind of hidden multiple views in the browser thing. So there are multiple things you can load in, and the way you do that, we've gone through this in other tutorials, but generally speaking, you right click and load, and that'll bring that piece of code in. So this is for components you want to load into your system. You access it, again, either off this button on the launcher or Parcel Manager. You can also, if you know the parcel's name, you can just type it in, something I haven't used in quite a long time. You can also unload them. And again, not so terribly useful. The way you tend to unload things is right click here and remove it from the system. So there's an option down here, remove unload, that would unload it that way. Typically you want to do that from the browser. The main thing you want to get to off the system menu, quite honestly, is not the collecting garbage. That's something you can do. Changes, this goes through change sets, something not terribly useful when you're using a system like Store for version control, but it is there if you've got a process that goes back many, many years, you're familiar with this. Otherwise, stick to Store and things will be a little simpler. Settings. This is important for a number of reasons. This is where you can customize the way the system is running for you and make basic level changes. This is where you can change the basic look and feel of the system. There are changes afoot within the engineering team so that this set of options will no longer be something you can pick, but for the moment you can customize this. It's a nice way of doing one very important thing. Oftentimes it's quite useful to run multiple images side by side to test something out, and it can be very hard to differentiate between, well, which one is which launcher belongs to which one, which browser belongs to which image. Well, if you make one look, say, like Windows and another look like Mac, they're very easy to differentiate. So you can do that. There will be other ways of solving that problem in the future. Just be aware that it's there now. Typically you want to leave these alone. If for some reason you want to switch the way the middle and right mouse button work, you can do that here. I don't really care for that, but some people do. Under System, we just went through this. This is where you have the VisualWorks home variable, how things are loaded. This gets into command line options, typically only relevant for runtimes, but there are a bunch of options here. Read the documentation, it goes through this in detail. Memory policy. This is important if you want to change the ceiling and floor for what VisualWorks is going to use on memory. You can make these numbers bigger or smaller and just make it current. There are a number of other options in here. Printing, so you can change the way things print. The transcript, you can change things where they're going to go when you run your image headless. Deprecation, whether it raises an exception or just logs it to the transcript. That can be useful as you're upgrading from one version of VisualWorks to another to make sure that as you're running your system, you can log to the transcript or get exceptions and find out, am I using code that my vendor has deprecated? It can be very useful. Other tools, you can customize the browser, the debugger, the formatter. These would require entire screencasts on their own to go through. Suffice to say, you should take a careful look at each one of these categories and see if there's anything you want to change. So moving along the launcher again, browse. You can browse various things in the system, the entire system, which brings up this browser back here. Browse for specific classes, so I can say, well, let's go ahead and look for class message, and you notice the way it autofills. If I start typing, it will start filling in the possibilities for me as I type, and autocomplete, so you can see here I don't even have to keep typing. I can just hit return and it'll bring up a browser on class string directly for me. So that's a nice thing. You can browse the senders and implementers of things. You can inspect various things in here. So there are various options there for browsing. Debugging, we've done an entire screencast on the debugger. I would recommend you go look at that to see what these various options are. Under the Tools menu, Change List, this goes into code recovery. We've done a screencast on that. The workspace, that just brings up a fresh one of these. And you don't really need to have multiple workspace windows running. Notice that there is a new tab option here, so you can come up here and add new tabs to this guy. So you can just go ahead and hit the plus button and get a new tab. So there's really no reason to open multiple workspace windows. You can operate just in one and keep this guy running. Under Window, this can be useful if you want to refresh everything. If you suspect that things aren't refreshed, you can refresh everything. You can iconify everything. You can restore everything. You can get a new launcher. Not useful in most respects. Every so often your launcher will get a little wonky if you're making customizations to it. Kind of an advanced topic, but every so often you need to relaunch it. If you do, this is where you find that option. And important in Smalltalk development in general, not just VisualWorks, Smalltalkers tend to have an awful lot of windows open. If you've lost one, you don't know where the browser that's on class string is happening to be on your system, it's here listed. So as you open new windows, and I'll open another one and select something here, I will open another one and select something up there, and now I can't remember which one is which. I can go to Window and find it right there. So if I've lost one, I can find it through the launcher. Finally, under Help, you can load the help, you can get the object reference, you can get the installation workspace, the system workspace. So if I open this up, I can see a bunch of information about this particular version of VisualWorks and get information about what's going on in it. So there's a bunch of information you can gather this way. Also, the system workspace is right there. More information about how to do things programmatically that you can also do from the tool set. Now, everything I went through from the menus up here is also available here. I can save the image. This will save under the existing name. Again, for visual.in, you probably don't want to do that, but you can save under the existing name just by this button. Open the parcel manager, edit the system options. That'll bring up the same tool that we brought up before. The browser, this is the most commonly used button I think on the system, is just this one to get a system browser. And class variable namespace, so you can get the searcher for classes. So this is the same one we had before. So again, as I type, it starts autofilling for me. And under this one here, I have references to class variables, I have implementers and senders, and I have the file browser, again, if I want to bring that up within VisualWorks. This can be a little slow if you have a lot of network drives attached, especially in an enterprise environment. So you might want to be careful about bringing this up depending on what you have attached. It can be a little slow to reference everything, especially on Windows. And finally, over here at the far right, I can bring up a new workspace. And again, not a whole lot of need to do that unless you've closed yours, because you can always open new tabs. So that's a basic overview of VisualWorks. Lots of tools in here, lots of things that are worthy of screencasts on their own. So I would suggest that you read the documentation, take a look at the release notes, and of course, come back to the website if you have more questions. So that's about it for today. Until next time, have fun with SynCom Smalltalk.